Welcome, and thanks for joining me today on Mortgage Manager Playbook, a podcast for sales leaders who want to improve their team's sales performance and originate more loans. I'm Pat Sherlock, your host. Hello, today's topic is really such an important topic, and it's part of our series of fixing the broken sales model. And the topic is moving data from IT to sales. And I have the perfect expert, James White. James is the general manager of banking at Total Expert, is one of the smartest guys in mortgage banking. So I'm thrilled to talk to you. And I know that because I heard you at many different conferences. And James has had a long career within the tech world and certainly in the banking world and helping banks and depositories bring customers to them and attract them. So, James, I'm thrilled to have you today.
Thanks for having me, first off. And if you wouldn't mind telling my wife that I would really appreciate that. So this is great.
Well, no, that was a true story. I met you at a conference, and from recommendations of people that heard that say you were one of the smartest guys in mortgage banking. And so I had to have you on, and I'm glad we finally were able to schedule you. And so, because I know you're at conferences and speaking quite a bit. So let's talk about this topic. And why I think it's such an important topic is because of the issue, and I'm involved at the sales level, at the field level, and I don't see that the loan officers typically have any access to any data. And that is really, I find, pretty incredible. So, talk to me what your experience has been and why we really need to move it from the IT department down to the sales level.
Yeah, so there's a number of factors that are really playing into it. So first, compliance. Organizations have
Mm,
historically been really concerned about cyber attacks and access to data and compliance, and they've really treated data as a liability versus an asset. And a number of other industries have really made that shift. A lot of fintechs, especially
mhm,
B2C fintechs, have made that shift. A lot of new fintech applications, they take the data elements first and how they can monetize and leverage the data, and then they build the platform around it. And that's
mhm,
completely opposite of how we've done in mortgage lending. And we've got to really look at the amount of data that we have either on past customers, especially our servicing portfolio.
mm,
If we are a depository institution, we have portfolioed loans as well, all of that information, and then also be able to leverage third-party data to supplement what we have for our contacts and leads so that we can do personalized engagement because other industries have been doing it for forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you with that for sure. And so, but it does lead to the issue. Is it also partly, and you would know this if you've had a long career in technology and fintechs, where the data, it used to be an IT issue because it was so technical and it was hard to do, and it never got back down to the sales or the marketing department for the reasons that you almost needed to have really a computer specialist. And now the data seems to be really more easily available. Talk about that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, data warehouses became popular in the late 90s, but
Mhm.
what really ended up happening is as we brought all that data and normalized it, the IT and accounting areas used the data for reports and didn't
That's
really
right.
think about making it actionable. And now there's been a big focus, I'd say, the past 10 years, but really the past 5 years on trying to make data actionable, and
Mhm,
being able to make it easy to understand and convert it over to alerts or insights so that you can personalize the communication, to the consumer, which from my view, personalization is a commodity these days, but you lose more credibility by not being personalized than you
mhm,
gain by being personalized. And so when you're trying to separate yourself, especially in today's market, where every lead that comes in is gold. You're not just trying to handle volume like you were a few years ago. You've really got to make that future borrower or borrower feel special and like you
yeah,
understand. And even more so now, as rates are fluctuating,
mhm,
you want to be able to retain, those borrowers. EPOs are actually going to become a topic again, because, perhaps we're going to see some refis that come. And, at Total Expert, we have a tremendous amount of, I think we have 35,000 loan officers that log into our platform every day.
mhm,
So we
mhm,
can really see the breadth of the industry, and I think we have 15 of the top 25 lenders, so we have a lot of volume there as well. We have seen 35,000 alerts for rate, which means the rate was at least 75 basis points below what they had locked in previously and funded. We saw 35,000 in this month alone. I think we're like 3 or 4 business days, yeah, in this month. Yeah, so it's really, we'll see after the election, but it really could become, some
Hmm.
that we all have to deal with.
So talk about, and this is one of the mysteries of life that I see, and I myself had a long career in the actual bank world and financial sector. I don't see that the depositories, and again, this is not just banks, but also the credit union side, they do have access to all of this wonderful data that they've had on their customers. But the reality is that it is either they don't make it actionable, as you say, or it doesn't get down to the people that are actually the salespeople. So this trend to me seems to be fatal that if you're not tapping into the data you already have, I think you're really missing out on a lot. So talk about it because you're out there talking to institutions every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see some institutions that are pretty far down that path. It is a long journey, by the way, because a lot of these platforms that the data exist in are old legacy platforms. And so
Mm-hmm.
trying to get that data normalized and in a way to make actionable is important. And a lot of these organizations don't have overarching data strategies for data governance. And once you get it normalized is great, but now you have to be able to keep as new data gets updated and refreshed, keep it up to date and clean. And a lot of organizations are behind the times, but even the ones that are moving forward, it can be overwhelming. And what I tell organizations is crawl, walk, run. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
take a lot of data elements to understand a consumer enough to make them feel like you
Hmm.
understand. You don't have to have the whole debt profile and,
Yeah.
their families' names and ages
Yeah.
and education. Like all that's great, but, just start with, small things first. Just, are they a current homeowner?
All right.
Married? Do they have kids? Have they had any recent life events that have occurred? There's a lot of very simple things that are out there that can really funnel to the sales channel so that that sales channel knows when to engage, either to determine intent or future intent, or be able to engage in a personalized way.
Well, you've already mentioned that there's some key data. So talk about, you've already mentioned a few of them. So is there kind of like the famous 5 to 10 that you think that if you have that data, then you certainly you're on a better mode because you now have enough to personalize the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Age, income are crucial. Home ownership is another, and presence of children. Those have been really the four data elements that organizations that have been doing it best started with. And then you build on that.
Hmm.
Then you start to look at credit profiles, and instead of household income, individual income, start to look at householding and is the mortgage in the husband's name, or is it joined
Hmm.
in the wife's name? Those types of things. All that is important, but you can really start to look at these types of things and really be able to engage either prospective consumers, or lend borrowers or existing. One of the things we've been really hyper focused on is the average lender only retains 1 out of 5 borrowers. So
Hmm.
if you can move that to 2 out of 5, that's just a small change, but that can make a big difference to the individual loan officer, but can make a really big change to the overall organization just in loan volume. And the way
Hmm.
to do that is by personalized engagement, continuing to communicate with that borrower and show your value, continue to show the relationship. And you can do that through automation and some of these other ways, LOAs, doing it so that it's not this big burden that you're trying to maintain. And, some of the best loan officers in the world do that today, and just leveraging that little bit of data to keep them engaged so that you're front of mind, for them whenever they go, because a lot of it comes down to referral partners and things like that. And so you want to
Sure.
make sure that prospective borrower has a loan officer in mind when they go to look for a home, instead of relying on that real estate agent to refer one.
So, do you see the challenge? And this is always one of the things that I've seen is that you're asking the loan officer. In fact, I think the depositories have definitely emphasized and they pushed a lot of things down at the loan officer level. And one of them is data input. And so, maybe part of the challenge is, and when I listened to you say that, I think you said there was 35,000 loan officers go into your system every day. Well, there's 350,000 loan officers in our business. And so what's going on with the other ones? And so is it that you're asking them, or do we need to get to the point of technology where we don't have to input, we could just talk it because salespeople are talkers?
Absolutely. You can't rely on your sales team to input data and it be consistent and clean. It's got to be through other data sources where you're automating that data because even and that doesn't matter if it's in lending or not. It's
Yeah.
sales channels in all industries. You shouldn't be relying on your sales team to supply you the only data. So there are a lot of third party channels out there. Just as I was talking about fintechs monetizing data.
Yeah.
Well, when they monetize data, that gets fed to these sources, these data aggregators you can connect your platforms to and be able to access more data than you could ever imagine on a consumer, and then be able to populate your database with that so that you're not relying on the individual sales reps. The problem you run into, as you mentioned, is the smaller shops. I mean, you've got to be able to scale, and you've got to be able to have the cost structure to be able to support that because it does cost money on the individual contact level to be able to populate that data. And so I think a lot of that also is coming down to you see a lot of consolidation now in the industry, both with depository and non-depository.
Right.
And you see a lot of the best loan officers really moving over to some of these institutions that have better tech stacks. So
Yeah.
a lot of the institutions that we deal with are really hyper focused on that tech stack to help with recruiting.
Well, that makes sense. So, talk about this whole issue of the performance level of, let's say, these individuals that do use, in essence, the data driven approach to personalize their interactions. What does it look like? How does that translate into volume? And what is some of the things that you see that they're doing that, let's say, obviously the others are not?
Well, so data is just one aspect, and you and I were talking about during our prep
Yeah.
about you also the organization has to be able to hold the sales reps accountable to following
Right.
those leads. You can feed all of the data to the sales teams that you want, but if the sales teams aren't leveraging the data,
Sure.
and that's a problem. We've seen on average about a 20% uptick just in leveraging database platforms like ours. And that's
Hmm.
not even talking about the individual alerts, like if you're focused on making sure that you're handling refis and when the rates drop, or helping with credit improvement, as an example for your declined loans,
Hmm. Hmm.
looking at home equity and all those types of things, following up with marriage or divorce or major life events that
Hmm.
apply to home lending. So all of that is incremental on top of leveraging a database platform. But as you know, there's a lot of shops out there that are still using spreadsheets or all
True.
types of other things. And lending is such a relationship-based business, and
Hmm.
so one thing I think is crucial is you don't replace the relationship with data. You use it to
Hmm.
supplement. What I have often said is it's high tech and high touch, and you
Sure.
balance the two according to the demographic that you're speaking with. So
Hmm.
my daughter, when she goes to buy a home, she wants a lot more tech and a lot less human interaction.
Right.
My demographic, I prefer a lot more human and a lot less tech. But even Rocket has proven around the tech side because the average consumer pays 35 basis points more for a mortgage with Rocket than they do, your average depository lender. And people are willing to pay for that ease of use, so
Sure.
which is crazy, but so you got to find that balance. And we still see inconsistency, meaning you're sending data to the loan officers. Some love it and embrace it, completely. Others refuse to use anything besides a paper notebook, and so you have to be able to do some of that, what I call air cover on behalf of the loan officer, even sending out birthday reminders and simple things. You can do that through automation. If you've got an old school loan officer who absolutely refuses to log into a platform.
Well, it's a mystery of life that we still have those types of people, but that's true. We do. So I see this certainly oftentimes, and they tend to be the bottom 50% that really aren't doing a lot of production. So, James, we've been talking about larger institutions, and I think the stereotype is that this is only for larger institutions. And of course, you are talking to smaller institutions every day. And I'm curious on what are some of the things that when you see the community bank as an example, or the smaller credit union, and even the independent mortgage bankers, where what is it that makes the difference in those institutions moving to this world? What's involved with trying to implement? And how basically, how long is like a return where they're actually seeing a return on investment, that this is no longer something that they can put out, that they can think about 5 years from now? They have to be doing it now.
Just to your point, to be clear, we have institutions that have 8, 9, 10 loan officers that leverage our platform. I think a lot of it has to do with the culture, first off. And even large institutions, by the way, deal with the culture issue. So what we see is the most progressive institutions, depository or non, typically have executives from outside of the industry that they have brought in that are used to doing things around data and personalization. And so it really starts at the top and then works its way down. And so we call it time to value. ROI starts as soon as you start to get engagement from a platform like ours. There's many others. I'm not trying to sell our platform, but once you start to get a platform engaged with loan officers, you start to see value within the first 30 to 60 days. So my view is you've got to leverage data in order to compete, especially as the economy continues to evolve and consumers continue to evolve. So every young or demographic, as they age up into home buyer
Right.
age, even if they're delaying a little bit, once they get married and out of college, you start to
Hmm.
see these first-time home buyers, they're expecting a different experience. I call it Amazonification. Amazon has changed consumer expectations, whether we like it or not. They expect it to be easy for them. They expect personalization and recommendations, and they get turned off by the older process where I'm having to come in to the office a ton, or I don't
Hmm.
feel like the
Yeah.
whoever's trying to sell me understands me at all. And they just don't also share the same, younger demographics don't share the same loyalty that older demographics did. So you've got to manufacture that loyalty, and you do that through engagement and personalization and
Right.
being able to build that relationship, just as I was mentioning, with a balance of tech and human interaction. So, and the best organizations, no matter what size they are the ones who have a culture of we're going to be a trusted advisor of our consumers, and we're going to separate ourselves. And that's not just one thing I want to mention. That's not just leveraging data to understand the consumers, but it's also leveraging data to understand your referral partners
Oh, yeah.
and engaging your referral partners as well in a personalized way and building those relationships. So it's really across the board that you've got to be able to do that. And I think that we'll continue to see people drop out and find new professions, that can't adjust,
Right.
to data just because, as you mentioned, performance, eventually production is going to drop for them enough where they're going to, want to either the organizations or themselves are going to want to find something different. And so what we see is it's progressive institutions. And I've seen on the depository side, a lot of banks and credit unions are now trying to position their mortgage arm more like an IMB, where it's really more
Yes.
sales focused and really trying to drive volume, selling more on the secondary market than they did in the past.
Hmm.
I've seen, which I never thought I would ever see in my life, a credit union that sold the vast majority of their mortgages on the secondary market. That's really unheard of.
Sure.
And so, as you're trying to produce that volume, you've got to leverage data for both referral partners and the consumers.
So let's take our forecasting hat on and let's look at 5 years from now. And what are your thoughts on what will be some of the trends that relate to certainly all of this that you're talking about? So now we're talking about going into 2030 and beyond. What do we see that are some of the things being worked on that you see going to take root that will be probably something that institutions would want to be looking at now?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question, actually. So I always really get a chuckle about the buzzwords that get used in the industry. And like AI is the big buzzword.
Sure.
But AI has been around for over a decade, but it's the buzzword now. And most organizations aren't in a position to leverage AI in a real way because of all the data problems that you and I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see that AI, yeah, it'll take 5 years. In the next 5 years, well, first of all, I think all of our listeners will be mourning because hopefully you and I will be retired. They might be, mourning our absence. But I think AI will make things easier, make it more personalized. I don't think it's going to take away jobs, but being able to deliver more personalized content quicker, as an
Mm-hmm.
example, being able to answer questions. You'll never, I don't believe, be able to replace the human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I see AI, people starting now, don't start because of the buzzword. Most organizations are trying to implement something AI just so they can check a box to say that they have AI. But really, what you want to do is start normalizing your data and getting clean data that AI will be able to read, which is going to take a long time. We talked about data strategies and governance, and
Mm-hmm.
whether that's IMB or depository. It's going to take a while. Compliance to catch up to allow it, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think in 5 years, you'll see AI being used in a real way to make things more personalized, easier.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it'll be interesting as the demographics shift, how the home buying, not just the experience will change, but also the market will change, and what homes will look like, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us Gen Xers and Boomers are looking to downsize,
Mm-hmm.
and especially on the Boomer side, it's a big
Mm-hmm.
generation. And so it'll be interesting to see, will there be so many, castles out there, for uh,
Yeah.
dollars,
Yeah, we like capsules, that's for sure.
we do, we do. But as we get older, I
You
get
don't
tired
want
of up and down steps. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, what are our takeaways today?
Yeah, so the first thing that I tell anybody that will listen to me is don't be overwhelmed by the thought of using data, and don't think that it's going to replace anything that you're doing today. So, first off, just as we mentioned earlier, you can start with just baby steps. We call it crawl, walk, run. Use just a few data elements to help maintain your existing portfolio, especially if rates drop. You want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're on top of all of the mortgage that you've funded in the past 18 months or so. You want to make sure that you're staying on top of them, and it doesn't take a lot to do that. As we talked about, the four data elements are pretty simple to obtain, and those are there's 100 vendors out there that will populate your databases with that type of data. So it's pretty easy to do. So don't be overwhelmed, but get started, because if you aren't at least started now, you're behind. So
Well, I think
it
that's the words to the wise. Get started, and that
just get
applies to a
started.
lot of things. And James, I want to thank you today. So, how can people get in touch with you if they have any questions about what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is on LinkedIn. I would just tell everybody I can be a little bit of an annoying follow. I do post a lot of articles and webinars and things, but if you do get bored easy, then I'm a good follow. And it's James White on LinkedIn, and I do work at Total Expert. You can also connect with Total Expert at totalexpert.com, and we're usually at most mortgage conferences as well, and uh, just look forward to meeting everybody. So
Well, attend his sessions because I understand they're really obviously just like this podcast, they're really terrific. So thanks, James, and thanks everyone for listening. And certainly, if you would like to listen to more podcasts that go in depth, go to patsherlock.com. Thanks again, James.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to Mortgage Manager Playbook. You can catch up on all our episodes by subscribing to receive each week a new show. Don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and team members. If you're looking to increase production, call me to discuss my prospecting sales training program, Ramping Up Realtor Referral Sources. Check out my website, www.patsherlock.com.